You know, usually when we look at a text that describes the United States as modern-day Babylon, a place in, rapid decline, facing the literal wrath of God, you expect the conclusion to be, well, pretty bleak.
Right. You expect the narrative to be, this place is doomed, get out while you can. That's the standard apocalyptic formula.
Exactly. But the text we're diving into today, it posits this contradiction that I have to say it really stopped me cold.
Yeah.
It paints this incredibly intense apocalyptic picture of America, but then, in the very same breath, it claims that Thanksgiving...
Turkey and football Thanksgiving.
Right, that Thanksgiving is, and I'm quoting here, this world's most important holiday.
It is a jarring juxtaposition. I mean, you have absolute condemnation of the nation on one side. We're talking descriptions of rapidity and vengeful anger.
And then the supreme elevation of its signature holiday on the other. It's wild.
It really is.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking a text titled The Divine Origin and Judgment of Thanksgiving. It's a collection of excerpts and historical commentary centered on the teachings of a figure named Lord RayEl.
And I have to say, this is one of the more unique historical reinterpretations we've come across.
It certainly is.
And just to set the stage for everyone listening, our mission today is really to trace the internal logic of this document. It's a fascinating, if intense, exercise in world building. We're going to look at how this source reinterprets American history, from the Pilgrims to the Founding Fathers, and why it argues that gratitude isn't just a polite gesture, it's a spiritual survival mechanism.
And a quick standard disclaimer before we jump in. We are explorers here. We aren't endorsing the theology or the claims made in this text.
Not at all.
We are just impartial observers trying to understand a narrative this source is building, to see how the pieces fit together from their perspective.
Precisely. We have to treat this as a specific worldview. It frames history not as a series of, political events, but as a spiritual dialogue.
A conversation.
A conversation between a rebellious child, that being the United States, and what it calls a divine monarchy.
Divine monarchy. Okay, that is the linchpin concept here. So let's get into the roadmap.
Let's do it.
We're going to cover the original sin of America, which, spoiler, is not what you think. We'll look at the text retelling of the Pilgrim story, a betrayal, and finally, why this source thinks judgment is happening right now.
And ultimately, why a Thursday in November might be the only life raft left for the entire nation.
Okay, let's start with the diagnosis. The text doesn't pull any punches. Right out of the gate, it identifies modern America specifically as modern-day Babylon.
It does.
Yeah.
And it describes the country's current state as a rapid decline into rabidity.
Rabidity, that's a strong word.
It's visceral. It describes Lord RayEl viewing the country with, and this is a quote, tear-filled eyes, reddened by vengeful anger.
That's such a complex image. Vengeful anger, which implies judgment, but also tears, that suggests, what, grief?
It's the archetype of a parent dealing with a prodigal son. In fact, the text calls America a loyal but rebellious child.
A rebellious child.
It says, he professes undying love for what the country once was and what it could have been. So there's this deep sense of lost potential that really drives the emotional tone.
Okay, so let's drill down into that rebellion. Usually when we talk about America's sins, we talk about slavery or imperialism.
The usual suspects.
But this text identifies a very different original sin.
It does. According to this source, America's fundamental error, its original sin, was separating itself from God's rightfully appointed monarchical system.
Wait, so the sin was democracy?
Effectively, yes. Or, more specifically, the rejection of monarchy. The text argues that establishing a republic was an act of arrogant folly.
Arrogant folly.
The logic here is that humans require a specific type of divine guidance, a monarchy. And by rejecting that for self-governance, America, well, it unmoored itself from divine protection.
That turns the standard American origin story completely on its head. We're taught that the break from monarchy was the moment of liberation.
Right. That it was the moment we grew up.
And here it's portrayed as the fall.
Precisely. It views the Declaration of Independence not as a birth certificate, but as a divorce decree from God's preferred system. And the text points to a very specific moment to prove this irony. September 1789.
George Washington and the First Congress.
That's it. The source notes that 5 members in Congress went to Washington to request a day of public thanksgiving. But you have to look closely at what they were thanking God for.
I was reading that section and I had to read it twice. They wanted to thank God specifically for affording them an opportunity to, quote, peaceably establish a constitution of government for their safety and happiness.
To establish a constitution. Within this worldview, that is just a tragic irony. They are thanking God for the chance to create the very system.
The system that codifies their rebellion.
Exactly.
That is wild. It's like they're thanking the parent for letting them run away from home and change the locks.
That's a great way to put it. They're grateful for the mechanism of their own rebellion. But, and this is key, the text doesn't dismiss the gratitude itself.
Ah, okay.
It acknowledges that Washington and those founders were sincere. And that sincerity seems to buy them some grace.
So it's like the text is saying, you did the wrong thing, but at least you were polite about it.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
It establishes that the act of gratitude has value, even if the object of that gratitude is, flawed according to their theology.
So that's the political layer, but the text goes back further, to 1620, to the Pilgrims.
The spiritual Jerusalem, as the text calls it.
I found the description of the Pilgrims here to be really stripped of all the romance. It doesn't paint them as heroes or villains. It just focuses so heavily on the grit.
It focuses on the cost. It emphasizes their indomitable zeal. They got on the Mayflower, which the text points out was just a Dutch cargo ship, to find a place to practice love without government encumbrance.
There's that anti-government theme again. They weren't trying to build a new government. They were trying to escape one.
Right. They wanted to live under God's law, not man's law. But the text frames their suffering as a kind of payment. It details the tumult and tragedy. Attacks by savages, and again, I'm using the text words there, rampant disease, a brutal winter. Half of them died in the first year.
Half. I think we just gloss over that statistic. Imagine getting on a boat with 100 people and only 50 are alive a year later.
It's unimaginable trauma. But the argument the source makes isn't just history was hard. The argument is that because they didn't lose their faith despite all that horror, something shifted spiritually.
They passed the test.
Exactly. Their faith under pressure, it triggered a reward. And that reward was a temporary savior.
Chief Massasoit.
Massasoit. Now, history books often frame this as either a friendly potluck or a naive mistake. Right?
Yeah, depending on who's writing the book.
But this text frames it as a divinely orchestrated transaction.
It mentions Massasoit was an embattled chief. He wasn't just wandering by. He had his own problems.
Yes. His people had been ravaged by disease, wars with other tribes. He wasn't looking for friends. He was looking for leverage. He needed the settlers better weapons and medicinal practices.
And the settlers needed someone to teach them how to grow food before they all starved.
It was a mutually beneficial, pragmatic alliance. Not sentimental, it was survival. But through the lens of this text, that pragmatism was God's method of intervention, the result. The bountiful harvest.
Which leads to the first Thanksgiving. The text describes it as being attended by civilized Christians and savage pagans, very charged language. But it says the feast was dedicated to gratitude for God's immeasurable blessings.
And that definition matters for everything that comes next. The text defines Thanksgiving not as a harvest festival, but as a specific act of gratitude from a rebellious people. It's an admission of dependency.
So at this point in the narrative, things are good. You have the Pilgrims, Massasoit, gratitude, survival. But of course, the peace doesn't hold.
This is the turning point. For over 2 centuries, the text claims America was marvelously blessed. And the reason why was that initial gratitude and unceasing Christian evangelism.
It even cites Matthew 24:1, saying America fulfilled the prophecy of spreading the gospel. But then it talks about defiant dalliances with the devil.
And those dalliances are personified in the story of Massasoit's son, Metacomet.
Also known as King Philip.
Right. In this narrative, Metacomet is the archetype of the ungrateful recipient. The text points out that he benefited greatly from his father's alliance.
He grew up under the protection of that alliance.
He did. He even petitioned the court to change his pagan name to a Christian one, Philip. The text uses that detail to really twist the knife.
So he took the benefits. He took the name. He signaled he was part of the system.
He took the culture. But then, the text says, he quickly turned his back. He broke the alliance and went to war against the very people who had, quote, saved his people.
So it frames his war not as a struggle for land or sovereignty, but as a moral failure, a rejection of saving grace.
And if we zoom out, Metacomet is a mirror for the United States. This is the crucial connection the text makes. Just as Metacomet benefited and then turned, The text suggests America benefited from God's protection, only to turn against it with the arrogant folly of self-governance.
It's a fractal. Metacomet's story is the micro version of the American macro story. Blessing, gratitude, betrayal, judgment.
Exactly. And because the betrayal happened, the judgment must follow. Which brings us to today, the judgment.
The source is pretty clear here. The wrath of God is currently active, and this is where Lord RayEl comes back into the picture. The text explains why this figure was born and raised in America.
It says he was born here to show understanding and mercy at the time of judgment. He needed an American perspective because America is the melting pot.
But the description of the melting pot isn't the e pluribus unum ideal we're used to. It calls it a virtual cornucopia of cacophony.
That phrase stuck with me too, cornucopia of cacophony.
I love the sound of it, but it's terrifying. A cornucopia is a horn of plenty good things, abundance. A cacophony is harsh, discordant noise.
It implies an abundance of chaos. The text argues that America demonstrates the human condition when it's left unguided. When you remove divine monarchy, you don't get utopia. You get a noisy, chaotic mess.
That's a heavy critique of democracy. It's saying, look, you wanted to rule yourselves. This noise is what that looks like.
Precisely. The text frames the current state of America not as a political failure of one party or another, but as the inevitable result of trying to operate without divine hierarchy.
So Lord RayEl is here to witness the mess, to judge it.
To judge it, yes. But, and this is the core of the episode, to find the one thing worth saving. The text says that despite everything, the rapid decline, the original sin, Lord RayEl considers Thanksgiving this world's most important holiday.
It seems so counterintuitive. If you view the country as a rebellious Babylon, why do you care if they sit down for dinner on a Thursday?
Because it's not about the dinner, it's about the posture. The text states that if America has a saving grace, singular, it is the importance the country places upon thanking God for his unfathomable beneficence.
So gratitude is the shield.
It's the tether, the last remaining link. The text suggests that as long as that one act of gratitude exists, the connection isn't fully severed. It balances out the cacophony.
It's interesting that it credits the act itself. It doesn't say because Americans are good people or because they give to charity. It's strictly focused on acknowledging that blessings come from above.
And that goes right back to the arrogant folly we talked about.
Yeah.
The folly is thinking, we built this. We are the masters of our fate.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving is the one day where the nation collectively admits, we didn't do this. You did. According to this source, that one admission is powerful enough to hold back the apocalypse.
It elevates the holiday from a long weekend to a spiritual battleground. The dinner table becomes a place where judgment is either averted or invited.
It really does.
Yeah.
It suggests that a holiday of gratitude might be the only shield against total condemnation. It's a very functional view of thankfulness. It's not a nice feeling. It's a legal defense in a spiritual court.
So let's try to synthesize this. We have a text that views history as a dialogue between human gratitude and divine judgment. When gratitude is present like with the Pilgrims, there is blessing.
And when it's replaced by arrogance or betrayal like with Metacomet or modern Babylon, there is judgment.
It's a worldview where political systems are spiritually charged. You can't just have a neutral government. It's either a divine monarchy or it's a rebellion.
There is no middle ground in this text. You are either aligned with a monarchy or you are part of the cacophony.
And that brings us to the final takeaway. This source takes a holiday that is often seen as, just cultural parades and shopping deals. Right, it's secular.
And imbues it with this massive life or death significance.
It completely raises the stakes of thankfulness. It argues that gratitude isn't just a feeling, it's a force, a counterweight to sin and rebellion.
And that's the question I want to leave everyone with today. It's something that kept nagging at me as we went through this.
What's that?
If this text is right, even just metaphorically, if gratitude is the only thing balancing out arrogant folly and preventing total destruction, what does that suggest about the actual power of being thankful?
It suggests it's far more potent than we give it credit for. We tend to see gratitude as a soft skill, something nice to have. This text views it as a hard survival skill.
Is it just good manners? Or is it, as this text implies, a survival mechanism strong enough to hold back the inevitable judgment of a modern-day Babylon?
Well, if it can balance the scales against the wrath of God, as the text claims, then it would be the most powerful tool in the human arsenal.
Something to chew on next time you're asked what you're thankful for. Maybe the answer matters more than we think. Indeed, it might be the only thing that matters.
That's it for this deep dive into the divine origin and judgment of Thanksgiving. Thanks for exploring the cornucopia of cacophony with us.
See you next time.
Take care.